When we get into the playoffs, and of course, the Ravens, the undefeated Baltimore Ravens, back at home against the Oakland Raiders this week. I've got an interesting segment here. I've been chasing this guy, tailing him for probably about 90 days now. He was a member of the Ravens team last year in previous seasons, and had various injury issues, concussion issues, and has decided to retire from professional football. And if you follow him out on Twitter, as tens of thousands do, you know he has been in retirement as outspoken a voice as there's been about medicinal marijuana, pot, cannabinoids, cannabis, and has been freely sharing all sorts of medical wisdom as well as some persuasion. He is Mr. Eugene Monroe out on Twitter, and he is making his triumphant return here, but first visit as a retired NFL player and a man on a mission about weed. We welcome Eugene Monroe back onto the program, who was very, very kind to us and to the Bone Marrow Registry and did some nice things for There Goes My Hero. Gene, what's going on, man? How are you? I miss you around the locker room. It's always fun catching up with you, but we'll do it here on the radio. How's life, my man?
Hey, man, what an intro. Thanks. But I'm doing well. Life is good.
Well, for you with this mission to go from 1 minute you were playing in the league and an active player to beginning at some point last winter to go on, look, there are Twitter rage things. There's crazy stuff that drunk people do in the middle of the night on Twitter or carry out whatever they want. You've been very, open about this thing, and, I would say it's the dirtiest little secret that's not a secret around the NFL is a lot of guys smoke a lot of weed in the NFL. A lot of guys in sports smoke a lot of weed. There's a lot of weed smoking going on just in general in our society. And I think when you go out to Denver, you go out to Seattle, you go out to the western part of the country, not only do you smell it everywhere, but it's not this dirty little hush thing that it's always sort of been for most of my lifetime and your lifetime as well on the East Coast. But you have been out in front of this. Maybe Ricky Williams is the other guy from a football perspective. But this isn't about, snickering and getting high on the weekend. This is about something that you've discovered on the medical level that I really want to give you a platform to talk about, Gene.
Well, thank you. And certainly this wasn't an overnight issue for me. And really, I trace it back to, really initially having my first major injury, thinking back to college and being hurt and instantly being on a prescription of pain medicine and anti-inflammatories. And really, I've been taking, I don't any longer, but I was taking anti-inflammatories from '06, really all the way up to the point I retired to manage a lot of the injuries that I've had over the years. And particularly in the NFL, I was pretty healthy for the majority of the beginning of my career. I had a post-season knee surgery after my rookie year, which I didn't miss any time for, but I did have some issues, and then all the bumps and bruises in between. And in 2014 in Baltimore, I had a mid-season knee surgery, and then just last year I had another shoulder surgery. So number of injuries to various joints, but also concussions. A few while I was in Jacksonville, and then another that took me out for really 4 games at the beginning of last season.
Well, for you, having played mostly 15 games every year, concussions did not sideline players years ago. I think the last few years, obviously with the protocol, they are moving in a direction where it at least appears as though they care about you guys, right? And the addiction to painkillers throughout our society, not just football players, but whether it's Prince and Michael Jackson or on through entertainment, right on into white collar America. For football players, there's pain involved in your job, and I don't want to say they're dispensed like candy in a locker room, but that certainly has been going on for 5 decades, back now to North Dallas 40 being made in the early 70s, where all those guys were smoking weed, sitting in the hot tub, and popping pills.
country. You're right. I think the microscope is on football because it's very public, and also the potential for addiction issues from these drugs is higher at comparison than athletes. And there's a huge football and sports, but across our country, we know that they've been causing a great deal of harm to people, sometimes leading to death, overdose issues. And if we can curb those issues and reduce the potential for those negative effects on our athletes by allowing them to consume a substance that won't have many of those same detriments and can still manage their pain effectively, then I think it's worth taking a look at. At the very least, understanding some of these results that people are getting all over our country by using medical marijuana.
How rampant is this in NFL locker rooms, the use of marijuana as a chill-out method? But clearly, as a fan, we all think, well, they test for this. They'll just pop all these guys and they'll throw them off rosters. And certainly we have seen many players, Josh Gordon, many players, Ricky Williams, used as that guy's using weed. He's not going to play in our league. We caught him. He peed dirty twice. He can't play. I have a feeling 10 or 15 years from now we will laugh at that in the same way we sort of laugh at the Reefer Madness movies now, 4 decades later, 5 decades later, however long ago it's been. But for you having played in a league, guys medicating or chilling out, whatever they would call it, by using weed, this is a pretty prevalent thing from what I know about it, and I don't know a lot about it, but I also know guys getting caught isn't so prevalent. In the mind of a fan, have that make sense to me, Eugene?
Well, I don't think, it's really fair to separate the use of marijuana by any athletes and really expand it upon, anything differently than what it really is. And you find that many people in our country use marijuana, whether they're athletes, business professionals, or whatever job title they may have. People use it for various reasons. And playing sports, and specifically combat sports, competitive contact sport like football, that certainly creates a great deal of pain and inflammation and a great deal of stress. Cannabis shows to alleviate some of maybe the reasons why towards cannabis to deal with some of the rigors of the sport.
Well, when do you discover, look, you're from New Jersey, right? I mean, you went to college at Virginia. There's college, there's New Jersey, there's weed. You get exposed to it as a fun thing or as a chill thing in the same way someone would drink a couple of beers. But then there comes the point where you say, all right, let's get the science involved in this. And I think that's been an awakening for me and for anybody of my generation. I'm a little bit older than you as well, a couple decades older than you, quite frankly. And, in hushed tones and in alleyways and in jazz bars, this has been going on for 100 years. But I think really in the last 5 years, maybe 10 years, where you start to put on traditional television, whether it's CNN or whether it's Viceland, and see, doctors talk about the medical use of this, where it's so stigmatized in our society and has been for the better part of a century now, certainly during the Nixon administration, that the science part of this turns a guy like you on it, and you start to read about it. And, you come at it from a very scientific standpoint, but I know you put a lot of effort into this. Where did you turn to learn more about this at a scientific level?
Well, there's all over the internet that you can find a lot of peer-reviewed articles, a lot of scientific journals, and people who have just written about their experiences, a lot of physicians who have learned about cannabis themselves and in turn have been able to recommend that their patients use it for some of their conditions. And then you see the results that are often very positive. So, I definitely took a ton of time learning as much as I could, and I still do. It's an ongoing process, and I'm constantly looking for pieces that may be helpful, if not to myself, but to others. And I like to share that on my social media. I'll post on Twitter and also on my website and Facebook and Instagram, just so people can, learn about some of the things that I'm seeing. There seems to be new news and innovation